Michael McQuade, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here with part 3 of the Michael McQuade Masterclass, which is negotiation. So let's go straight into the first question. What is the biggest misconception about negotiation?
Oh, well, I'd say that people often go into a negotiation thinking that it's a bit of a battle or a fight, and that there's a winner and a loser. And I guess if you're approaching negotiation, or how I approach negotiation, and if you want the maximum chance of success, you've got to treat it that there is a win-win position, so that each person can come out of it feeling like that they have achieved what they set out to achieve at the outset. It might not be in the exact form that they thought to begin with, but it has to feel like that, I think, for everybody to come out with that feeling that they've had some success out of it, and also so that it maintains the relationship for the future, particularly if it is something that may have an opportunity to come up again, where you're going to be speaking and dealing with the same person again.
Yeah, I think that's key, what you say about future relationships. You don't ever want to feel like you've been screwed, or that you're screwing the other person, because you just won't do business again. And word spreads so fast that people will just avoid you like the plague. What do you think?
Exactly. Yeah, it's I think it's, for me, certainly for me, how I've always kind of conducted myself now, out of 22 years in business and property development. It's with integrity, and that if I ring somebody, I know they'll answer the phone, unless they're, in a meeting or something, but they want to speak to me. They're happy to speak to me. So, and I think that's the kind of relationships I've always tried to maintain and grow and cultivate, is that, nobody will ever say that I've ever, done something on them that's really bad. Nobody will ever say that I have ripped them off, because that's not how I operate. And I think that's how people should be doing business, because if we can't find a way where it works for both of us, then perhaps the deal can't work, or the deal isn't the right deal for you and I to be doing together. I shouldn't be winning or getting a better position necessarily at your expense. And at your expense, me knowing that you aren't really aware of that. Because again, I think just on the basis of trying to be a good business person and a nice person, and generally as a human being, that nothing good comes out of knowingly, ripping somebody else off and taking advantage of a situation. So that's not to say that in negotiation you're soft, but you aren't doing anything underhand to kind of, pull the wool over somebody else's eyes. Yes, there's certain information sometimes that you don't disclose at certain points in the negotiation, because that's part of negotiating. But ultimately, you want the other person to have felt like that they have achieved what they set out to achieve as well, albeit it might be in a slightly varied form.
It's good what you say about it needs to work for both of you, else there might not be a deal, or it might be the wrong deal. Negotiation for me is about creating a win-win. You've both got to feel like you've left the room or done the deal, and you're both really happy with it.
Yeah, correct. And there'll always be things in a negotiation as well, as it progresses, that aren't going your way, or that aren't quite working out the way you thought they would for you. And that's fine. That's okay, because, there's no guaranteed outcome of any of these discussions or negotiations, or, when you're trying, especially when you're trying to make deals that aren't so straightforward. And I think it's about as well being adaptable and being clear for yourself as well as to what your minimum requirements are, and so that then when it's time for you to walk away, if that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, makes total sense. So when you are negotiating, how would you negotiate from a position of weakness?
Well, I guess this is on the basis that somebody else is, the person you're talking to or doing a deal with is in the position of power, or the feeling is that they're in a better position of power than you are. I guess what you would be doing there is, and what I would be doing and do when I'm negotiating from that point of view is to, I guess, take the focus a bit away from, I guess, that one person has more power than the other, and just focus on building the relationship and building a relationship around, well, what are we both trying to achieve here? You want, let's say in the context of a property sale, you want to sell your property and I want to buy your property, and focusing on what you bring to the table rather than necessarily where you're lacking. So for example, that might be that you're a cash buyer, so you can move faster than somebody else. Maybe you're not that experienced. Maybe the seller has picked up that you haven't really done a project like this before, and they're a bit cautious about getting into a contract with you for something, or an option agreement, whatever it might be. Then I guess you're going to focus on the things that make you different to somebody else that somebody else might not be. Maybe focus on another skill set that you have. Maybe you're a professional in some other capacity and you can bring those skills so that you can demonstrate to the person that, albeit, yes, I haven't done this particular type of project before, I have the skill set to understand how to do it, and here's my approach, here's what I would be doing, here are my timelines, so that you kind of build confidence in them, in you, that you know what you're doing, and I guess start to shrink that gap between them being more powerful and you feeling like you're in a position of weakness, and just create common ground as well. And don't appear desperate as well. So quite often people, if they feel like they're in a position of weakness, they can sometimes try too hard. And I think that's another mistake that people make, is coming across a little bit desperate. And you should always be coming across like you're trying to make a deal here. You have your criteria. You're trying to figure out a way to make this work, but that it doesn't have to work at all costs. There are alternatives for you that you're looking at. For example, you're looking at other things, and also that, if you don't find a deal that's going to work, it may well be that this doesn't go anywhere. And I guess being open about that also shows then the other side that, okay, well, you're not going to be here at all costs.
Yeah, that's good. It's giving that impression to the other party that they're not holding all the cards, that you've still got a decision to make and you're happy to walk away. Would that be right?
I think so, yeah. If you can demonstrate and you can come across in genuinely that you are willing to walk away from this if you can't find a suitable solution, then that, I guess, brings some of the power then back to you, because unless the person has a really better offer on the table, in which case they probably wouldn't be speaking to you to begin with anyway, but if they don't have a better offer on the table and they're talking to you, being clear that you will and can walk away, and, I guess without, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be seeming like you're holding somebody over a barrel either, but at the same time, you do want to be making it clear at various points during the discussions, because bearing in mind, I guess these negotiations would happen over a number of different occasions at different times. So these will be different conversations, and there's no harm, and it's a good thing as well in each conversation to be reiterating the fact that, you're trying to find solutions to overcome these points that are currently problematic for you, as in me, if I'm negotiating. However, and if I can't find them, we'll just have to, shake hands and walk away, and maybe we'll do something in the future. So you've got to keep reiterating that, I think, each time you speak to somebody, and keep refocusing the mind on what the intention is and what the main aim of this is for both of us. Because what happens is, over conversations and with people, and it's just human nature, is that A, they hear what they want to hear most of the time, and B, sometimes it doesn't sink in. You've got to say something like 3, 4, or I think there's something some psychology around somebody needs to hear something 5 or 7 times before it truly sinks in. So even though you might feel that you're repeating something you've already said, you do have to repeat those key things that are key to your negotiating and that are key to forming your position, you have to repeat those things every new conversation that you have with somebody in order for that and for them to, I guess, be fully aware of where you sit. And then that builds their confidence in you as well then, because they can see that you have a measured approach and you are consistent in what you're doing as well.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think that consistency when talking with people is very important. And when you are having your conversations and it might not be going the way you want it to go, and they're pushing back or objecting quite a lot, how do you handle those pushbacks?
Well, I guess it's important to not get confrontational. That's the first thing. I mean, I've seen people get heated before, and that doesn't go anywhere positive. And it's not really going to, things can get said in the heat of the moment that just mean that all your good work is done, and the negotiation breaks down. So that's the very first thing, is don't get confrontational. And I guess steer the conversation back to more how your involvement or how doing a deal with you will lead to the outcome that the seller wants or the other party wants. So I think that's what you want to do is kind of let any objections or let any heat in the other party, cool down a little bit, and just rework the conversation and keep bringing the conversation back to, how can we make this work? I understand, that's a big issue for you. I'm trying to figure out a way around that. What other ideas do you have as to how we could make this work? And just start talking about ideas and diffuse it that way. And that's a good way then to calm things down and to kind of, I guess, bring the conversation back to refocusing it on what the other person said they wanted to begin with, reminding them that you're trying to figure out a way to make that work for both of you, and offering and asking them if they see another way for it to happen. And just get them thinking and get them talking. And that's a key thing as well.
Yeah, so it's almost a fact-finding mission then, based on the outcome that they want.
Yeah, because I mean, quite often as well, what I find in negotiations after all these years, and it's still the same and it never changes, is that quite often people say they want one thing when really they want something else. And they're unable to articulate what they really want, partly because they probably haven't really fully thought it through themselves. And what they say to you that they want, when you get to know them and have a proper conversation and break that down and start to delve, and if you're good at your questioning and you can tease information out of them, you'll more often than not find out that actually what they say they want is not really what they want. They're after something else, but perhaps the thing that they say they want is going to help them to achieve that. So in teasing out what they really are trying to get out of this, or what they're really trying to do with, for example, the money that they might get from this transaction, again, if it's a sale and you're giving them money for something, understanding what it is that they're really trying to achieve might help you then to come up with a solution that works for both of you, knowing that actually what they said they wanted in the first place is not really the outcome, it's something else. So for example, they might not need all the money up front, so you could be doing like some sort of a structured payment with them, if you knew that, and they could be quite happy with that, rather than taking a reduced price. They might be happy with a higher price but paid over a different time period. So there could be solutions like that come out of you doing a proper fact find and building a proper relationship with them, and actually getting to the nub of, and getting them to keep talking and getting them to repeat themselves, and always asking that same question, coming back to the consistency again, about always asking what is it that they're trying to achieve out of this, and actually hearing what are the common things, because each time they answer that question, they'll give you a different answer most likely. And what is the common thread that's coming out of that? And then you focus on that common thread and then try and find solutions that are linked to that.
Yeah, very good. So there, we focused on a lot of what we do within the negotiation when you're talking with people. How do you prepare for negotiation before you get into that room? What's the process for preparing?
Well, for me, it's very clear. It's being very clear, and I think you need to be very clear on what outcome it is that you're after. Be very clear on what you're trying to achieve. Be flexible to kind of, I guess, come up with different ways of getting there. But you have to be clear on what it is that you want to get out of it, and also what your red lines are, what your no-goes are, because that's what you want to do quite early on in the negotiation as well, is to understand if there are any of your no-go, if your red lines, if somebody isn't willing to budge on something, and that is a clear deal breaker for you. You need to find that out very early on in the negotiation, because there's no point continuing for more conversations if that's not going to be movable or agreeable. So I think you've got to be very clear and have your red lines identified very early on, and also go into the first conversation trying to, as much as you can, understand where the flex is, and if there's no flex on certain things that will cause you problems, well then you know to focus more on that bit early on, because if you can't overcome that, there's no point continuing any further. And then I think as well, just have done some research on the other party. You don't have to do loads of research, but just research some about who else you're negotiating with. Sometimes that'll be easier to do if you're negotiating with somebody who has a much more of a public profile, or they're much more on social media or on LinkedIn or somewhere, or they're a business owner and you can find out about them through their business and their website and stuff. But just to start to build a bit of a picture as to what kind of a person this is, and that might flavour as well how you sort of start and steer the conversation with them, by building a picture up about what you think that person will be like, and what you think will be important to them, and how you think they'll like to be engaged with as well.
Yeah, all very good points. And when you're preparing and trying to find out information about them and knowing what your red lines are, what's your thought about being really sort of on your feet and be able to think really quickly during a negotiation? Do you find that benefits, or are you happy to say, you know what, I'll have a think about it, I don't know, and I'll come back to you?
I think it's a negotiation. It's one of those things. It's fluid. It usually never goes to plan. There's no structure typically, because it's dynamic. It's a dynamic thing. So it's us two talking. We're negotiating. I'm finding out every time you speak in a negotiation, I'm finding out new information that you're then processing really quickly, and understanding then, well, if you want to say the next bit that you were going to say, or you thought you would want to say, is that actually relevant now? Do you want to say that now? Should you hold that back for later on? So it's a very dynamic thing. So you've got to be quick thinking on your feet, and be happy that if you don't know something, or you need some more time, to kind of pause things. It's better to pause things and come back to it later. If you hear something that was unexpected, or you hear something that concerned you, pause, come back to it later on. And that might even mean pausing the conversation fully and just saying, well, look, I'm going to need to give that some thought, and I think it's better if I do that away from this call. There was a few other things I just wanted to know from you now, and maybe things that still are helpful to know, and you might find those things out, but then pause to reflect on your own time. I think quite often what the mistake that people make too is that, and I've seen it time and time again in negotiations that I'm involved in, is that people keep talking and they say too much. And they say too much, and when they say too much, what happens usually is, and what can happen, is that they say things that impair or impede their position, or impede their negotiation position for negotiating further from. And I think that's what you want to be very mindful of as well, is that, but that, it just takes practice, and the more you do, the more seasoned you become at it. But it's very important, yes, to not say too much, and to take pauses, and be happy and be confident to say, and that's even if you're very inexperienced at negotiating, be confident in just saying, right, what takes me 3 conversations might take somebody else 10. That's okay. Make it take 10. Don't be afraid to say, okay, I'm not quite sure what's happening here, in your own mind, of course. I'm not quite sure what's happening here, and say to yourself, I need to take a pause here, because I'm being dragged down a route that I don't want to go down just yet. I'm being forced to answer things that I don't really want to answer just yet. So collect some time, pause, have a return call, and I guess people sometimes get a bit afraid about doing that because they think, oh, it's weakening their position. Actually, no, it's strengthening your position as far as I'm concerned, and what I would say, because it shows that you are considered and you're willing to, take time out when it's needed, and that you're not going to get dragged into something and you're not going to say things out of turn. And I think that also instills certain amount of confidence in the other person that you're a safe pair of hands.
Yeah, that's right. It's about being a safe pair of hands and giving that impression to the other person that you know what you're on about. And obviously, apart from listening to this episode, how can someone improve their negotiation skills?
The very first key thing is I guess, listen. Be a good listener. So people quite often go into negotiations and go in and blast out everything that's important to them and what they need and what they want. And that's to my mind and from my experience, that's the wrong way to approach it. Of course, it has to be a dynamic conversation, but what you want to do is a really good negotiator will be talking, but they'll be doing the least amount of talking, and they'll be getting the most amount of answers. And I think, but again, that comes with practice. I mean, I've been selling stuff since I was 16 on various different small businesses when I was a teenager. So I'm kind of, and I've been doing property now for 22 years. So I've been buying and selling and all that time and negotiating at all levels across projects. And the key is to get the other people talking. Get them talking, listen out for clues that identify, where they could be flexible more so than they're willing to say. But again, that comes with the more experience you get. They don't have to say something for you to pick up on a cue that there is an opportunity potentially to structure the deal this way. And quite often it's the things that they don't say that offer the most insight. And when you get them talking, you quite often spot things that they're unwilling to talk about or don't want to say. And then that gives you insight into maybe something that is quite important to them, or it gives you insight into something that you may want to tackle that in a different way now and ask a different question and kind of loosen it up in a different way. But that you can only do that by getting them talking and doing that. And then that's where the conversation becomes quite dynamic when you're, I guess, quite a good negotiator then, is because there's no set format. And that's where it becomes critical that you understand exactly what you're trying to achieve, and how you get there then will work very differently each time you're in a negotiation.
Yeah, amazing. And I think this episode has been great so far and delivered so many nuggets of negotiation top tips. And I've got one final question for you. What is one negotiation tip that someone can take away and implement right away to turn them from a negotiation novice into an expert?
Okay. One tip, I would say one tip that anybody can do, no matter what your level of experience is start with the other person. So when you're in a negotiation, start talking to the other person, be inquisitive and get them talking to you. So ask them about why they're selling the building. If it's a building, we're talking about property. Ask them about that. Ask them things like, what are they going to do with the money? Are they going to spend it on a holiday? Just get the conversation going. Get them talking. And you'll be surprised how much flows. I think that's the thing. So go into it from the point of view that you're there to find out information. Quite often I think people will go in and they will think, I need to come in looking like really powerful here because this person is going to decide whether to do the deal with me or not. No. It's the other way as well. You need to decide if you're going to do the deal with this other person, so they should be happy that you're speaking to them about their deal. But in order for you to kind of create that win-win situation is to get them speaking. So start by getting them talking.
Amazing. Absolutely love that. So if people want to reach out and find out more about you, Michael, how do they do that?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, just with my name. So Michael McQuade on LinkedIn. There's a few Michael McQuades, but I'm the Michael McQuade MRICS, because I'm a chartered surveyor by background and probably one of the only bald-headed people as well. That's Michael McQuade. So it shouldn't be too hard to find. And I have a website as well that people can check me out on, which is michaelmcquade.co.uk. And that's where it talks about the mentoring work that I do with people in property, both people who are starting out and also people I work with people who are very experienced as well, who need help with their strategy and refining their plans. And there's lots of information on there about how I work with people, and also testimonials from people as well.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks a lot for your time, Michael.
No problem. Thank you, Sam.
Cheers.
Bye.